opportunity, and but I also know how hard it is, and so I'm excited and really encouraged and happy to be here and for this opportunity that we're all going to get together and do this together. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jeff Lazo. I work for Julie. So I'm the director of the Societal Impacts Program at NCAR. The program was designed to try to integrate social sciences into the weather community. We're a small and getting smaller program, but we're kind of focusing more on research now. The focus of our research is mainly on the communication, generation, communication, use, and value of weather information and impacts of weather. I'm actually an economist and working with meteorologists and communication people, so it's really fun to do this interdisciplinary, working with other co-PIs on some projects here as well. So.
I'm John Schneider. I'm the acting director of the Global Systems Division in NOAA in Boulder, Colorado. So we do kind of the IT end. We do the actual warn generation systems that are in the weather service systems. We develop those in Boulder, and we're developing the next generation systems that actually the forecasters use in the forecast office to send out those messages. And we're going to keep working on those for the time to come. So we need to really understand how this works to make that happen. And the other thing we're doing that really is associated with this is we're generating or building next generation high resolution models. You may have heard of the high resolution rapid refresh, and currently the system that's going into operations next week in about 5 or 6 days is the rapid refresh, which is the follow-on to the rapid update cycle. So there's kind of that whole series of models that we're pushing out that have promise to give better forecast in the future for tornadoes as well as many other events. So that's it.
I'm Ann Bostrom from the University of Washington, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a policy analyst by training. I'm a risk analyst by predilection, and my background is mostly in social and behavioral sciences. I do work on how people think about and make decisions under uncertainty, and in particular risk perception and risk communication. I do a little bit of work on hazards, and in that regard I work for Julie and Jeff and those guys on a current project. I hope that we can achieve something in the nature of coming up with a research agenda that will make sense and that's actually implementable, and having been at the National Science Foundation, I think that's not an easy task, so I wish us all luck.
Hi, I'm Russ Schumacher, from assistant professor in the Department of Atmospheric Science at Colorado State University. I do research and teach on mesoscale meteorology and analysis and prediction of heavy precipitation and severe storms and that sort of thing. So my background is very much in meteorology and atmospheric science, but I've also always had an interest in the societal side of things, and have started working a little bit with the social scientists to do some analyses of both the integrated effects of both the weather and the societal impacts of weather. And I guess another thing that I'm trying to do, or maybe that I bring here, is trying to sort of go in new directions for educating students in this sort of work, both in terms of research and just in the way of they think about what meteorology and what interdisciplinary research means. So those are some of the things I hope to bring here, and just I hope to learn a lot from all the great people here in the room.
Hello, I'm Walker Ashley. I'm an associate professor of meteorology in the Department of Geography at Northern Illinois University. I've been there since 2005. I'm a meteorologist, but I'm also like to use GIS a lot, so I'm a big mapper. My research as it pertains to this workshop is largely dealt with spatial temporal analysis of mortality and fatalities associated with all sorts of weather-related hazards, from rip currents to lightning to tornadoes. I'm most interested, my little pet rock is exposure, and how exposure is changing and leading to increases in disaster losses.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tanya Francine with the National Weather Service in Glasgow, Montana. I kind of represent rural America. We have the smallest media market in the country. My disaster background started with firefighting and EMT in high school and college. I did that for many years, and it really, standing on a mountaintop praying for rain really brings in the meteorological aspects. In 2005, I think it was, I work in a physical science world, but the social sciences collided in a great way in my life with the Was-Is program, and my career path has completely changed from that point on, and for a good thing. I work with local, state, federal, tribal partners and with the general public. I'm the opposite of what Kevin does. He does the internal science. I take everything we're doing and bring it out to our partners, to our public, and try and get them to look at things in a different way. I'm also the co-lead for the Weather Service's Skywarn program. We've done a lot of work in that area in the last 3 years. We have a lot more work to do. But thank you for having me here today. And that was my time.
Thanks. And good morning. I didn't quite figure out where I could stand to be able to see most of you, so I beg your indulgence here. My name is Mike Liftman. I'm with NOAA Sea Grant in Silver Spring, Maryland. NOAA Sea Grant is part of the, it's under the OAR umbrella. To that extent, Steve and I and several others in the audience collaborate. So NOAA Sea Grant is a university-based partnership between the federal government and 32 coastal states. So those of you who are going to educate me about what happens in the interior of America, I'm really looking forward to this great week. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that hazard-resilient coastal communities is one of our focal areas. So hopefully the research agenda that you will generate this week will help inform our next strategic plan, which is in the works and should be up and live by the end of this year. By way of background, I'm an economist, so I bring that to bear. And in a past life, Mark and I worked at LSU. I was there for 25 years, and 2005 was a momentous, life-changing, career-altering type year for us. So we look forward to the deliberations this week and hope to be able to contribute.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is John Murphy. I'm with the National Weather Service. I'm actually the Chief of Plans and Programs, and one of my primary things is focusing on researched operations. It's one thing that's usually not well resourced, but it's talked a lot about. So I'm here to take away the things I can take away to get into operations, and I'll work with Jason and others in Weather Service to do that. I'm here representing the Office of Science and Technology, which is all about getting science and technology into our field operations, and that science is not just physical science, but social science. So, thank you.
I'm Jason Toole with the National Weather Service. I'm Chief Meteorological Services Division and also the Acting Director of the Office of Climate, Water, and Weather Services. What we do is we help write the policy, define the requirements, identify the gaps, and assess the performance of the agency with respect to all our products and services, including severe weather. So when you look at what we're supposed to be doing, increasing the effectiveness of the agency's performance, technically we tend to think of ourselves as scientists and physical scientists first. That means it's all about lead time. But I think, as we know, it's not all about lead time. It's about increasing the effectiveness of our message. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can learn from this group, what we can identify in terms of the research program, so we can actually codify it in our policies and requirements, hand it off to John to deliver into operations, and also see what we can do to be more effective as an agency, both internally and working with our partners.
Hi, I'm Susan Jocelyn. I'm from the University of Washington. I'm a cognitive psychologist, and for about the last 10 years, I've been collaborating with atmospheric scientists and statisticians at the University of Washington to study decision-making in the context of weather forecasting, and we focus especially on decisions that are made with uncertainty estimates and on the end user. My approach is twofold. I study decisions in context using a naturalistic approach, but then I take pared down versions of those decisions into the laboratory and study them experimentally, systematically manipulating variables to see what their impact is. And I really think that a combined approach, social science, behavioral science approach, is important in order to really answer some of these questions that we'll be talking about here.
Hi, my name's Dan Soder. I'm an economist at Troy University now. I've been studying the economics of severe weather and weather forecast for some time now, going back to my days when I was on the faculty of the University of Oklahoma. I've particularly looked at tornadoes to a great extent in a lot of papers over the years with my colleague Kevin Simmons. We've looked, since we're economists, we like to quantify things, and so we've looked to specifically quantify the impact of tornado safe rooms, of the installation of Doppler weather radar by the National Weather Service. We've looked at the impact of tornado warnings and false alarms in the storm-based warnings and with the refining of the area warned. And right now we're working on trying to some exploration of the interaction between Weather Service tornado warnings and local broadcast meteorology. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Jaime Cruz. I've been on faculty at University of Colorado Boulder. At Texas Tech, I started working with the wind engineers there. Oh, by the way, I'm an economist. I'm currently at East Carolina University. I'm the director of the Center for Natural Hazards Research there. And I did spend 1 year, one-year tour of duty at NOAA as chief economist. And so I guess what am I interested in? I'm interested in the integration of the highest quality science, social, behavioral, and economic, and the physical science and engineering, and see if we can do that at the top of our game to answer some really difficult questions.
Hello, my name is David Pravat. I am an assistant professor at the University of Florida. I am perhaps one of two, maybe, structural engineers and wind engineers in the room, and I am, have been humbled to receive a career award to study tornado-resilient residential structures. This is a 5-year award in which it enables us to look at how to actually build homes that can resist loads that we have never conceived before. In particular, we're doing work right now on actual quantifying the perceptions of people exposed to wind-driven rain and wind and storm surge in our lab. This pilot project shows the disparity between what people feel and what they actually think they feel. And I think those issues, as we relate the two sides, will be where I would like to focus my efforts. Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Juan Ortiz, soy el manejador de emergencias de la ciudad de Fort Worth. Me gusta a mí caminar por en la playa y soy un escorpión. If you don't understand what I just said, my name is Juan Ortiz. I'm the emergency management coordinator for the city of Fort Worth, and I'm a Scorpio, and I like long walks along the beach. The reason I bring this point is just to illustrate the need to make sure that we disseminate warnings and alerts in multiple methods, multiple languages, to include American Sign Language. I am, like I said, I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator in the City of Fort Worth, and I am also serve in the Disasters Roundtable with under the National Academy of Sciences Division of Earth and Life Sciences. I'm also a point of contact for the Urban Area Security Initiative for the Dallas-Fort Worth, Arlington urban area, and have been involved in emergency management and homeland security for the last 18 years. I've been a coordinator in Corpus Christi, dealt with hurricanes along the coast, and I've also been the coordinator in Fort Worth since 2003, where we experienced large hailstorms as well as tornadoes that have gone through downtown areas. I'm also a co-chair of the Dallas-Fort Worth CASA initiative, where we're trying to bring fast scanning, high resolution fast scanning radar to lower atmospheres. And I think my time is up, so I'm going to pass it on.
Hello, I'm Lance Rothfuss, meteorologist in charge, National Weather Service, Atlanta, Georgia, at least for another 7 weeks. At which point I'm going to be I'll see if I get this right, Deputy Division Chief for the Warning, Research, and Development Division at National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman. Did I get that right, Steve? I'm okay? Okay. It's a mouthful. It's easier to say MIC. I've been in the front line of National Weather Service warning operations and such for about 20 of my 25 years of the Weather Service. That front line can be some of the most frustrating and rewarding times the frustration is at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're issuing the warnings knowing that people are dying out there. And this whole workshop and all of this has been something very important to me to figure out ways that we can help and assist the warning forecasters out there on the front line. We've had some things recently in Georgia, integrated warning team, doing things like this at the local level with Dr. Myers and some folks from the CDC who you'll meet here shortly. Some exciting things going on there. My regret is that I am not going to be able to stay for the whole conference because with the upcoming move, as much as this is important, the happiness of the spouse is more important. So I will need to leave after today. I got here for one day, but I'll be going back tonight.
Good morning. My name is Bill Bunting, and keeping with the theme of job transitions, I'm beginning my third week as the Operations Branch Chief at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Before that, I had 10 years as the meteorologist in charge of the Fort Worth office of the National Weather Service. My interest spans the range from the role of outreach and education well before a disaster to the forecast watches and warnings that lead up to it. My particular interest is in the role of judgment and decision-making on the part of the forecaster during the forecast and warning process, and also being in the process of moving from Fort Worth to Norman, I can echo the spousal happiness aspect that Lance referenced.
Hi, I'm Linda Bork. I'm from the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. And my research expertise going back, starting with the 1971 San Fernando Valley earthquake, is looking at population-based surveys to study community response and behavior and activities after disasters or in preparation for disasters. Most recently, I've been interested in looking at, with my research group, it's not just me, looking at preparedness for earthquakes and for terrorism in a national and a state data set, with particular attention to how information feeds into the preparedness decision.
I'm Ray Birbee. I'm an emeritus, i.e. old, professor of city and regional planning at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I've spent most of my career looking at what state and local governments can do, or haven't done, which is a better term, to improve the resilience of the built environment to various natural hazards and to improve the preparedness of its occupants. I've noticed that despite the admonition not to do it, most of you seem to have research agendas of one kind or another. So in the interest of truth in advertising, I'll tell you mine. I think we have not spent near enough time looking at the rental sector, the preparedness of tenants in particular to deal with hazards, including tornadoes. And an even less studied group are the owners of rental housing and other rental properties, and their willingness to invest in improving their properties so that they're better able to withstand various forces of nature.
Good morning. Forgive my back to you who have gone for more coffee. I'm Elizabeth Davis, and I appear to be a token of sorts. First, because I'm here from New York City, so I guess I'm your token northerner. And then secondly, along with Coordinator Ortiz, I appear to be a token practicing emergency manager. So I run a firm based out of New York City. Our focus is inclusive emergency management, which means that we're brought into all 4 phases of emergency management to deal with marginalized population issues in particular. So this will include the spectrum of age from pediatric to geriatric issues, very different on that spectrum. The spectrum of disability, non-English speaking, cultural components to disaster resiliency, and a myriad of other issues that are not necessarily as mainstreamed as we would like them to be. I would also like to suggest that I'll sit here today to represent wear a few other hats to represent other organizations. As the chair of the Special Needs Caucus with the International Association of Emergency Managers, and also as the chair of the Healthcare and Accessibility Functionality Topics Committee with the National Hurricane Conference. So the fact that I've been to many, many towns and cities small jurisdictions to large jurisdictions, both in this country and outside, before, during, and after disasters. I am, however, a first-time visitor to Birmingham. So I did exactly what I'm sure all of you did when you checked in last night, and that is once you got to your room and situated your card key somewhere where you know you're going to grab it if you had to leave, you also opened up the preparedness page in the material the hotel provides. I know you all did this. And I know you noticed that it's very fire specific, as well it should be, right, Erica? But nonetheless, it did not even mention any other local hazards that I might need to be aware of as a new visitor to this area. I also am sure you noticed that it did not indicate in bold in the television or radio listings which is the local emergency alert station in the area. So these are issues that I'm sure I look forward to working with you on over the next few days. I look forward to learning with you. And more importantly, actually, I look forward to taking your message beyond just this week. Thank you.
Before I did that, I looked at that, I looked for all the restaurants that sold barbecue.
Hi, my name is Kevin Knupp. I'm a professor of atmospheric science up the road at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. We were in the middle of the outbreak a year ago, and I was experiencing my own stresses with family where they were when I was out working, collecting data on this day. We've got some funding to start looking at this case from the National Science Foundation. We've been looking at the meteorological aspects, and that road has taken us down the expanding path of including the sociological aspects and interacting more with the Weather Service, emergency management, and TV media.
My name is Ken Gallupi. I last week took over the directorship of the Decision Theater at Arizona State University. And prior to last week, I was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill for 14 years. I spanned several different areas. I am a meteorologist, was a forecaster many years ago, did modeling for 15 years with the EPA. But I got over into decision sciences about 15 years ago. And also am an informatics technology person, ran a supercomputing center for North Carolina for many years. In the role where at UNC, I was with the Renaissance Computing Institute. We got into collaboration with the Office of Science and Technology Weather Service to understand emergency management. I also wear another hat of being an emergency manager for 10 years with the Red Cross, for doing their disaster assessment at the state and local levels, senior management team for North Carolina Emergency Management, which all that I'm now giving up. So now I kind of span looking at decision sciences. How do people use knowledge management in that role, and technologies, and what role does it play, as well as the physical science. Oh, should say one other thing. I'm leading a group that's independently evaluating the impact-based warning for Central Region. I'm trying to help them out and understand emergencies.
Hi, I'm Josh Wurman at the Center for Severe Weather Research in Boulder. In my past, I've been at University of Oklahoma and NCAR. I'm a physical scientist. My interests are severe weather and tornadoes, also hurricanes. I operate the Doppler on Wheels fleet for the National Science Foundation. A lot of my interest is trying to quantify the actual damage potential of tornadoes, what the wind and damage relationships are by getting measurements in the tornadoes, comparing them to damage. Is one of our active areas.
We'll get the hangers on at the back.
Thanks. My name is David Sugarman. I'm a medical officer at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and National Center for Injury Prevention and Control in the Division of Injury Response. I'm also associate professor of emergency medicine at Emory, where I worked last night, so if I fall asleep during any of the work groups, that's probably why. And what we try to do is look at the injured following man-made and natural events and characterize the injuries that people have, as well as risk factors. I was fortunate enough to join the National Weather Service Assessment Team here in Alabama. Met amazing people in the field, including James Spann. It was mentioned by nearly everyone we surveyed in the field as a major person they listen to for weather information. And we went to 40 of the hospitals in Alabama, collected information on all those that were injured and hospitalized, including those that passed away. And we also then interviewed a random sample of those as well as community members to learn about those factors, lead time, where they got their first pieces of information, what types of injuries they sustained, and also the mental health impact of this traumatic event, which is quite impressive. Nearly 60 of the 300 people we interviewed, whether case or controls, have diagnosed PTSD after this event, which was quite shocking. We're trying to use robust field methods to further the work of NOAA and National Weather Service in collecting information that's representative of the population so that we can use that information to better inform next steps in terms of access to shelters. Many of the people didn't know of shelter points and didn't have access to them, but that's a big piece of the messaging for an EF4 or 5 tornado, et cetera. Many of the messages weren't in the appropriate language, including Spanish, and didn't have access to it. So there's just a lot to be done. We're trying to use strong epidemiologic methods to further that, and I'm going to pass it.
I'm Rebecca Noe. I'm a epidemiologist at CDC as well, but I'm in the National Center for Environmental Health in a group that does disaster epidemiology. And we work with Dave's group quite closely. I actually went out with Red Cross during the Alabama tornadoes and was really impressed with the fact that they have these condolence teams that actually, three-person teams go out and talk to the loved ones that lost a family member, and saw it as a great opportunity to capture information about if they were in the home at the time, where did the people go? Did they hear a warning? What did they do? So it was really a great experience for me as well. So our group have looked at the Alabama fatalities and also the 5 states that were involved as well. And I've put together a manuscript, a short manuscript that's going to be hopefully published soon with some of the National Weather Service people in Norman and lots of other people. You guys are lots of different places, but doing the same thing that Dave's group is doing, just looking at the risk factors, and it's just a National Weather Service is another opportunity for our group to go out and help do sampling. And we just finished a assistance with the WFO and National in North Dakota because they do an extreme cold warning, and they wanted to know if the population had heard about it and what did they know. And we just recently went out in the field and did that. So those results will be forthcoming.
I'm James Spann. I'm just a pinhead that does the weather on television here. Listen, the loss of life last year was inexcusable here. We're not as good as we think we are. And I'm having to accept that, and I think we all have to accept that in the professional weather community. And we've got to fix it. And I think I've been guilty so many years of being around these meetings and these conferences, and we sit down and we do what's right for us, the things that we think are right, the things that we think are proper. But it doesn't matter. Sometimes I think we ought to move these meetings down to the Walmart where real people are and listen to what they say. And I know there's some wonderful people in this room that understand that, and they're going to help us get better. So I'm just coming here with a spirit of humility, and I'm welcome to Birmingham, and I'm glad y'all are here. Harold's got his timer over there. I got to go.
Yeah, we always land on James for a quiet moment.
Guess we're going back to the canned talks. I'm Chris Mayhorn. I'm from North Carolina State University. I'm actually a human factors and ergonomics psychologist. So one of the things I do is actually participatory design, looking at actual users. So I was happy to hear a couple different references to people that are using these systems. Having come from Raleigh and been there for the last 10 years, I've become unfortunately familiar with a lot of different hazards. We had some pretty nasty tornadoes last year as well. One came within a mile of my house. And then we had the strange earthquake as well. So, again, had some interest there. As far as what I do, I conduct research looking at technology as well as risk communication. Specifically, I look at warnings. And my pet rock, the thing that I study as well, is aging. So I'm very interested in looking at how we communicate with older adults, how we develop protective action recommendations that take a lot of these different attributes into consideration. So happy to hear that a lot of folks are doing work that's at least similar to what I'm doing, so I'm looking for that interface. So thank you.
Morning, Mark Levitan with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. My background is in structural engineering, wind engineering, hurricane engineering. Done a lot of work with evacuation and sheltering. I want to applaud NOAA and the Weather Service for putting together this meeting to try and start to break down or continue to start to break down some of these stovepipes that we have and to work interdisciplinary, because I think the most fundamental thing that we're dealing with, even from Steve's introductory slides, is we want to save more lives, right? That's what we want to do. Well, so I think we need to think of our framing, and we're all talking about our individual research interests and things, but let's think of the big picture. The big picture is the number one research question is then, how and why do people die? And how are they injured and how are they survive, right? If we want to save lives, our research question has to be the opposite of that. What's our fundamental picture? And so it's partly has to do with the tornado. It partly has to do with what information we get out and what warnings and what people do with that information once they get it, and it's how the buildings perform then. Do they take the right action, they take the best protective action, and how do the buildings perform around them? So it's integration, it's a function of all of those different elements, is how and why people survive, or how and why do they die. And so if we want to answer that question, that's our first step towards making informed decisions and appropriate allocation of resources and research priorities to get there. I'm fortunate enough to lead an amazing team of scientists and researchers at the National Institute of Standards and Technology studying the Joplin tornado, and we've got that expertise. We've got meteorology, wind engineering, structural engineering, behavioral science, and communications expertise, including my colleague Erica Kuligowski here in the audience, and Dave Jorgensen from the National Severe Storms Laboratory. And so hopefully, unfortunately, Joplin provided us a wonderful learning laboratory. And so we hope to do our best to be able to integrate all of those things and come out with really a groundbreaking study that will look at not only these individual factors that we're all used to looking at in isolation, but also how do they tie together and the interactions between those. The other thing I'll just mention is that in terms of timing, myself and I lead the National Windstorm Impact Reduction Program efforts at NIST, and we're doing a joint workshop similar to this one with the National Science Foundation in June to help develop the R&D needs specifically for windstorm impact reduction and coastal inundation impact reduction. And so a lot of information and context I'll be gathering here, we'll be able to take that into some of the details and help develop R&D, future R&D research priorities for windstorm and coastal inundation impact reduction. Thank you.
Morning. I'm Jay Baker. I teach in the Department of Geography at Florida State University. And I've been doing research on how people respond to hurricane threats for a long time, and especially how that relates to evacuation behavior and the implications of that for evacuation planning. But in 1998 and 2007, Central Florida experienced a couple of tornado events which were unusual by Florida standards in terms of the severity and the loss of life that occurred. I had opportunities to do some public response surveys in relation to that. So this is a really interesting group that's been assembled, and I sincerely look forward to the interactions we're going to have over the next couple of days.
I'm Laura Stough. I'm at the Center on Disability and Development. It's one of 67 federally funded centers through the Administration on Developmental Disability that focus on disability and disability research issues. I am also a fellow at the Hazards, Risk, and Recovery Center at Texas A&M, and I direct Project RED, which is research and education on developmental disabilities and disaster. What we do is we not only do research on disaster, but we look at how we can disseminate our research to emergency managers, to people working in voluntary organizations active in disaster, and then also taking what we learn from the emergency management community and help that inform the disability community. So my pet rock is research on disabilities, but I guess I would say my pet pebble is on people with intellectual disabilities, including autism and traumatic brain injury. That's a population that consists about 5% of the total U.S. population, and having an intellectual disability really affects how you perceive and how you respond to disaster warnings.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Sprague. I've had the opportunity of getting to talk with many of you over the last 4 years. I work for the National Weather Service Strategic Planning and Policy Office, but I have served as a social science focal point for the last 4 years. And frankly, I like to summarize that as the bull in the china shop, and the person that's constantly going to stoke the flames with NOAA leadership and Weather Service leadership of why we need to spend the money, why we need to put the effort into social science. We do a pretty decent job at getting our message out there, but again, we don't always articulate it to the people that need to take the action. So it's been an absolute pleasure doing this with you guys for the last 4 years. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go, and I think the thing that Pet Pebble, Pet Rock, Pet Mountain, whatever it is really finding a way to fully integrate social science with the physical science. And so thank you for putting up with me for the last 4 years, and I'm excited to be here and part of the Weather Ready Nation. It's unfortunate that we had the tornadoes of last year and the events that have happened, but in a way you've got to strike while the iron's hot. And so thank you for your time for the next 3 days and throughout the next year working through continuing this dialogue. So.
Good morning. I'm Nan Baldwin, and I'm with the Birmingham Business Alliance, so I'm a local girl. And I was invited here by Bill Murray, and the Birmingham Business Alliance is the chamber organization. We were invited here because I think what Bill wanted was to bring the layperson's aspect to this meeting and to build on the layperson's conversation and approach to all the fine research and all the fine technology that you all are doing and developing. The one thing that from a layperson and from the business community we recognize is that it's a quality of coordination when you get the warnings and how to heed to those warnings. The one thing that we've recognized is that it's a timing issue, and that quality of coordination with the timing, in that it's closing businesses so that the people that work in those businesses can then go to their homes, get their home, and pick up their children from school. And I know James can attest to that. If you shut the city down all at one time, then you clog up the highways and the byways. So in heeding to those warnings, it's a very crucial timing issue, and it has a domino effect, and recognizing how you can take all the fine work that you're doing and putting it into layman's terms where people recognize that it's a timing issue and having to close down those businesses, schools, and getting people into their homes in a safe and timely manner. So that's what I'm hoping to bring today, that part of that conversation to this table. Thank you.
And I'm Meredith Davidson Drennan. I also work at the Birmingham Business Alliance with Nan, and we both work in regional development, which is similar to community development. The BBA is a Chamber of Commerce economic development group. Specifically, Nan and I kind of serve as a liaison between the community and the business community. So this is certainly interesting from a quality of life perspective, what Nan and I are trying to do, but you don't have much of a quality of life if you don't have your life. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and hopefully we can bring a business perspective to the meeting today.
Well, this is a pretty impressive group of people. My goodness, you're toward the end. You're also very succinct. As I see it, Mike, you and I have about 10 and a half minutes each. And if you know me, I'm perfectly capable of using that time. It's great to see all you folks. There's a little bit of sadness. There's a couple people I was kind of hoping to see here. Maybe my closest friends I'm Dennis Wenger. I direct the Infrastructure Management and Extreme Events Program at the National Science Foundation. That program, although it's located in engineering, is kind of viewed as the disaster program for about 46 years. And of the social science research, over 90% of it that's been done by NSF has been done through that program. And in so doing, of course, I've been there now for a while. developed relationships, and I guess my two best friends in NOAA are folks I thought would be here. And one of the reasons they're such strong friends is because of what they've always advocated. And I'm talking about John Gaynor. I'm talking about Meredith Davidson, both of whom have been extreme advocates for the involvement of NOAA in social science research and so on. And I don't want to say anything against Dr. Sullivan in her presentation, but she's wrong. This is not unprecedented that a group like this is getting together. It's all happened before. Jeff and I were sitting here. You remember Pomona? A number of us were at a conference just like this in Pomona. Do you remember communicating hurricane information? A solicitation that we ran, my program, with NOAA, and in effect funded primary multidisciplinary integrated research in this area. So it's not unprecedented. We've had a number of efforts. I'll have to be honest with you. After all of them, I've been a little disappointed. Because I guess my pet rock, my pet rock is that the risk communication and warning elements inherent in what we're discussing are in need of total transformation. And so sometimes I was hoping we'd get that from Pomona. I was hoping we'd get that through communicating hurricane information, and we haven't. But that's my pet rock, and we're not supposed to bring them to the table. But thanks, good to see you.
Mike, as you come up so you can give instructions, I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Harold Burks. I'm a research meteorologist in the National Severe Storms Laboratory. And among other things, I'm the co-chair of the organizing committee for this workshop. And one of my hats at the lab is to help be the liaison to the social sciences for the Warn on Forecast program. That's a major research initiative at the lab. And over the years, I've written papers with psychologists and economists and sociologists occasionally. So I've got some interactions. And as we get the presentation that Mike needs up, one of the great things about the last, see, Mike and I and Bill officially took this job on January the 13th. It was a Friday. Yes, it was in fact a Friday. And the last 11 weeks have been something of a whirlwind. But it's been a great pleasure working with Mike and Bill and getting all of you here. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike so he can introduce himself and also give instructions for the breakout sessions.
It's kind of an interesting coincidence that once more I follow Dennis Wenger. I am at the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center at Texas A&M University. I actually followed Dennis as director of that center. I have an office that he vacated and now I'm in, and so this is a habit I hope to break. But most of my research has been done, as a matter of fact, all my research has been done on topics other than tornadoes. That may have been one of the reasons that I was asked to co-chair this workshop. When it comes to hazards, I seem to have a hazard-related attention deficit disorder. I've done research on 4 floods, the evacuation from the nuclear power plant accident at 3 Mile Island, a number of studies on the Mount St. Helens eruption, 5 hurricanes, 4 earthquakes, and a tsunami, in addition to some other research on preparedness for a variety of different kinds of hazards. One of the things that I'm hoping to contribute to the workshop and get out of this this workshop is some sense of continuity between how people respond to tornado hazards and other kinds of hazards. Tornado is obviously not the only kind of hazard that people have to confront, and that there are undoubtedly some distinctive aspects of dealing with tornadoes, but also some continuities between, on the one hand, earthquakes that have virtually no forewarning, and hurricanes at the other extreme that have extensive forewarning. So I'd like to see those kinds of similarities and differences brought into the discussion. Okay, having said that, I want to talk about what we're going to be doing in the first set of discussion groups. These are disciplinary groups. These are your the first star on your name card. What we want to do, and we'll show the map again in just a minute, but what I want to do is to reiterate some of the ideas that Steve mentioned and how it is that we're going to deal with this over the next 3 days. We're going to start out with disciplinary groups. We're going to have 2 sessions within the interdisciplinary groups, then a plenary session in which the group leaders report back to the group as a whole what went on in their discussion group. Next, after that, we're going to have some interdisciplinary groups. We reassigned people so that we got a balance of disciplines, or tried to get a balance of disciplines within each of the interdisciplinary groups. So we'll have a different task that we'll talk about later for the interdisciplinary group assignments. And then finally, for the last 2 sessions, we'll come back to the disciplinary groups again. The last 2 sessions in the interdisciplinary groups is when we're going to try to get down to the brass tacks of laying out some specific research projects. So for this first set of disciplinary group discussions, what we want you to do is to go to your assigned rooms. The first task will be to think back over the Norman Report and the white paper or white papers that your group is responsible for discussing. We had 8 white papers, and we only have 6 discussion groups. So there's one group that has a number of different issues that they'll be dealing with. We want you to go over that information, so that's the core common information that people will have in those groups. Then what we want you to do is to take what you already know about your discipline and to add that if there is information that's missing from the white reports and or the white papers and the Norman Report, to talk about what needs to be added, what more is there that needs to be addressed within your discipline that hasn't been addressed to this point, and then taking all that information to identify what are the neglected issues and what's a preliminary direction for the research needs. What we want you to come out of those discussions with are 10-minute reports to be given by the discussion leader or his or her delegate. We are leaving it up to the groups how they want to organize themselves, but we do want one person at least that is accountable for coming back with something to say to the plenary session. So we want to have your recommendations in that PowerPoint presentation. The discussion leaders have already been contacted. We want you to come up to the AV area. Before you leave for your discussion groups, you can pick up a flash drive that has the template for the presentations. When you come back from your discussion groups for the plenary session, there will be a break right before the plenary, and you'll be able to turn in your flash drives, and then we'll be able to get those loaded on the computer during the break, and people will be ready to go and give their 10-minute presentations, and then we'll allot 5 minutes for discussion after each of those presentations. We'd like to focus those 5-minute discussions on specific questions related to that presentation. We'll save a half an hour after all the presentations have been given so that we can go through broader issues and a general discussion before we leave for the daily break, and y'all can go off to dinner. So at this point, Does anybody have any questions about the format for the rest of the day today? Jay? Yeah, they have colors, and some of them have names that correspond directly to the white papers, and the one group that is mitigation, recovery, and disabilities is mitigation, recovery, and disabilities now. Any other questions? Yes. Left to right. Actually, it turns out it doesn't make any difference because you'll be in the same groups in the third round as you are in the first round. So if you read Hebrew, you can read from right to left. Any other questions? Okay, we can go to the coffee break and then to your discussion groups, unless. See Ryan.